Alexa Martin adjusted her glasses and took a sip of cold coffee. Outside the window of the Boston Globe newsroom, autumn rain was drizzling, turning the streets into mirrors reflecting the gray sky. The laptop screen glowed with a half-finished article titled "Second Chance, Reality, or Myth of the American Prison System." "Deadline's in 2 days, Martin," Editor-in-Chief Frank Donovan reminded her as she walked by. "I hope you've got something worth reading and not just another dry statistic." Alexa sighed. What was lacking to complete the article was live material, stories of real people who had been through the system and were trying to get back to normal. A classic journalistic dilemma: how to tell the story when the characters are either unavailable or unwilling to talk. "Maybe try social media?" she whispered to herself as she opened Instagram. The search query, "Life After Prison," brought up several accounts with stories of ex-convicts. Most were brimming with rage, accusations, or religious references, but one account stood out: Letters from Behind the Wall. Its owner, Jason Rivera, posted short but poignant notes about daily life at Walpole Prison. No pathos, no self-justification, just sketches, sometimes with a dose of black humor. "There was a potato in the mess hall today who remembers the Reagan days. She's probably serving a life sentence like half the residents here," the last entry read. Alexa smiled. The man kept his sense of humor even there behind bars. She hit the contact button and sent a message. "Hello, I'm a reporter for the Boston Globe doing a story on prisoner rehabilitation. I would appreciate the opportunity to ask a few questions about your experiences and perspectives after release." The reply came surprisingly quickly. "I'm surprised the Globe is interested in people like me." "Well, go ahead and ask questions. I have plenty of time. Another 3 years and 2 months. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Correspondence with Jason began with formal questions about his perceptions of the rehabilitation system. Armed robbery, first conviction, 7 years in prison, parole in 4 years with good behavior. "You know, Miss Martin," he wrote in one message, "the scariest thing here is not the bars, but the feeling that time has stopped. The world outside keeps changing, and you're stuck in amber like a prehistoric insect." Gradually, their conversations went beyond a formal interview. Alexa talked about news, books, movies. Jason shared his thoughts on what he'd read. The prison library turned out to have a pretty good collection of classics. Dostoevsky wrote that the degree of civilization of a society can be judged by its prisons. If so, our civilization is somewhere between the steam engine and the first telephone, he once remarked. When the article was published, Alexa sent Jason a link and a scan of the print version. His comments took center stage in the piece. "Thank you for giving me a voice," he wrote. "By the way, my mother read it and called for the first time in 5 years. Perhaps your article helped more than just me." They continued to communicate, though the professional need had long since fallen away. 3 months later, Alexa found herself starting each day by checking messages from Jason. Another month later, she found herself falling in love with a man she'd never seen in person. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. "Are you crazy?" Rachel Clark, Alexa's best friend since college, nearly choked on her martini. "He's a prisoner, Alexa, a prisoner! He's doing time for armed robbery." They were sitting in a small bar on the outskirts of Boston, where they usually went to discuss personal problems. "He didn't try to justify himself," Alexa said quietly. "He said he'd made a mistake and was doing the time he deserved." "Of course. What else would he say to a journalist?" Rachel snorted. "Did you even check his story?" "Yes, I did. He's not lying. He didn't hurt anyone in the robbery, surrendered voluntarily, no previous convictions." "Jesus, Alexa, you sound like you're looking for extenuating circumstances." Rachel shook her head. "Even if he's not lying, do you realize there's no future for you? What do you even know about his life before prison?" Alexa hesitated for a moment. Jason told her he grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit, his father leaving the family early, his mother working 2 jobs. Dropped out of college, scraped by on odd jobs, then got involved with a bad company. Classic story. "I want to meet him," Alexa said instead of answering. "In person." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Walpole Prison looked even darker than it did in the photos. Red brick walls, barbed wire, the faceless faces of the guards. Alexa checked in, left her bag in the locker, and headed for the visiting room. There weren't many visitors this day, mostly women with tired faces and children nervously looking around. Alexa sat down at an empty table and waited. When the door opened and Jason walked in, she didn't immediately recognize him. In the photos in his file, he looked rougher, tougher. The man in front of her seemed softer. Dark hair neatly cut, eyes attentive, intelligent. The orange uniform sat baggy on his lean figure. "Miss Martin?" He paused, studying her face. "Alexa?" His voice was deeper than she'd imagined, with a slight huskiness. "Just Alexa," she smiled, extending her hand. "Nice to finally meet you, Jason." The conversation didn't go well at first. Talking in person was harder than texting. But gradually the tension faded, and they talked for an hour before the guard announced the end of the date. Can I come again?" Alexa asked, rising. Jason looked at her with surprise and something akin to hope. "I'll be waiting," he replied simply. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. They discussed books, movies, politics, dreams. He talked about his life without sugarcoating or making excuses. She talked about work, about plans for the future. One rainy April day, Jason met her unusually tense. "Is something wrong?" Alexa asked, sitting down across from him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." He interlocked his fingers nervously. "Our meetings, they mean more to me than I can express, but I don't want to be selfish." "What do you mean?" "Us, Alexa. I see the way you look at me, the way I look at you. It's wrong. You're a young, beautiful, smart woman with a future, and I'm a prisoner with an uncertain future." Alexa felt a lump come up in her throat. "You don't get to decide what's right for me," she said quietly. "You deserve better." He shook his head. "Better than what? A man who reads the same books I do? Who understands my jokes? Someone I can talk to for hours and not get tired of?" She stepped forward. "Jason, I'm not a naive girl. I know who you are and where you are, and I know how I feel." He was silent for a long time, looking at his hands. "I'll be out in a year and a half if I get parole," he finally said. "What will you do in the meantime?" "The same thing I'm doing now. Show up. Right. Wait." She shrugged, as if that was the most obvious answer in the world. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A prison wedding is a strange ceremony. No white dresses, no music, no champagne. No white dresses, no music, no champagne. State official, 2 witnesses, brief procedure. Rachel refused to come, saying she wouldn't participate in this madness. In her place, Alexa was witnessed by her colleague Jenny from the cultural department. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the official said dryly. "You may kiss the bride." Their first kiss was brief, under the attentive gazes of the guards. But even that fleeting touch of the lips was enough for Alexa to realize that she hadn't made a mistake in her choice. An article in the Boston Globe ran the next day with the headline, "Journalist Marries Hero of Her Story." Colleagues looked on with sympathy, as if she were terminally ill. Frank Donovan called her into his office and talked at length about conflicts of interest and professional ethics. Eventually, Alexa was transferred from the social issues department to the culture section. "You know, it's a good thing," she told Jason on their next date. "I'll be writing about exhibitions and theater premieres. When you get out, we can walk together." "When I get out." He grinned wryly. "You know, sometimes I think that day will never come." "It will," she said confidently. "And we'll have a real life, a real family." As if to confirm her words, 2 months later, the pregnancy test showed 2 stripes. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk pregnancy wasn't easy for Alexa. Toxicosis, fatigue, swelling. Her belly grew and her husband stayed behind prison walls, seeing her only during monthly visits. "You look like a little Buddha," Jason joked when she came in 7 months pregnant. "A little one?" Alexa snorted, stroking her impressive belly. "I feel like a beached whale. The most beautiful whale in the world," he replied seriously. Rachel unexpectedly came back into her life, calling one evening. "I still think you made a mistake," she said without preamble. "But you're my friend, and I don't want you to go through this alone." From then on, Rachel became her main support, going to doctor's appointments with her, helping prepare the nursery, holding her hand during labor. Sarah River was born on a cold December day, a tiny little bundle with dark fuzz on her head and wonderfully attentive eyes, just like Jason's. "She's beautiful," he whispered when Alexa brought her daughter in for her first date. The prisoners weren't allowed to hold the baby, and he could only stare at the little girl sleeping in the carrier. "Thank you." There were tears in his eyes. For what? Alexa wondered. For hope. For meaning. For believing in me. He shook his head as if he couldn't believe his own happiness. I'm going to get out of here and be the best father in the world, I promise. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The phone rang at 11:30 in the evening as Alexa was rocking Sarah to sleep. Mrs. River? The unfamiliar male voice in the receiver sounded formal. This is Michael Thornton, CID. It's about your husband, Jason Rivera. Alexa's heart sank. What's wrong with him? She whispered, pulling her daughter tighter against her. It's nothing, ma'am. On the contrary. During the review of the evidence in his case, new circumstances have come to light. There's an emergency hearing tomorrow, and there's a good chance the verdict will be overturned. What? What circumstances? Alexa felt dizzy. I can't go into details right now, but I think you should come to court tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Alexa couldn't sleep all night. In the morning, she left 4-month-old Sarah with Rachel and drove to the county courthouse. The hearing lasted less than an hour. New evidence was presented. A surveillance video that was previously thought to be damaged, and the testimony of a witness who had previously refused to cooperate with the police. They supported Jason's version that he participated in the robbery under duress, without prior knowledge of the accomplice's weapons. Given the new circumstances and the prisoner's exemplary behavior, the court finds it possible to commute the remaining sentence to probation with mandatory registration, the judge proclaimed. Jason turned around and looked at Alexa with an unbelievable look, a mixture of shock, joy, and fear. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Welcome home. Alexa opened the door to her small apartment. Jason froze on the threshold, as if hesitant to enter. It was his first step into a new life in 3 years, a real one, without bars or guards. He was wearing the simple shirt and jeans Alexa had brought for him after the trial. The light gray duffel bag, everything he'd carried from prison, seemed inappropriately small for a man starting a new life. My daughter, he whispered, walking over to the crib where Sarah slept. Can I finally hold her? Alexa nodded, feeling tears welling up in her throat. Jason gently, as if afraid of waking her, touched the tiny hand with his finger. Sarah laughed in her sleep and grasped his finger tightly with her microscopic fingers. Jason's face was astonished, as if he'd seen a miracle. She's real, he breathed out. All of this is real. We're a real family. That night, lying next to Alexa on their first night together outside the prison walls, Jason lay awake for a long time. He stared at the ceiling, listening to his wife's measured breathing and his daughter's quiet sniffling in the crib against the wall. I'll make it right, he whispered into the darkness. I swear. Jason's first 3 months of freedom seemed idyllic. He found a job at a small printing company, one of the few businesses willing to accept an ex-convict. The pay was small but steady. In the evenings, he and Alexa would take walks with Sarah in the park, cook dinner, and watch the movies Jason had missed during his years of incarceration. The simple joys he'd dreamed of for so long. I can't believe people think this is ordinary, he said one day, as they ate ice cream on a park bench. The sky above your head, a child in your arms, a loved one by your side. It's a real miracle. Alexa rested her head on his shoulder. Sometimes you have to lose everything to learn to appreciate the simple things, she said quietly. Sarah was growing by leaps and bounds. At 6 months, she was crawling. At 8 months, she was sitting up and babbling in her own language. And at 10 months, she was taking her first tentative steps, making Jason tear up with pride. In prison, I'd often imagined what it would be like to have a normal life, he confided to Alexa. But the reality was 1,000 times better. Everything changed one April day when the phone rang. Jason was just putting Sarah down for her afternoon nap, and Alexa was working on an article in the next room. The ringing tone made him wince. Not many people knew their home number. Hello? He said carefully, trying to speak softly so as not to wake his daughter. There was silence on the other end of the line, broken only by someone's breathing. Hello? Jason repeated a little louder. Who is this? Long time no see, River, said a low male voice with a slight accent. How's freedom? Do you like playing the good family man? Jason went cold. It was a voice he'd recognize out of 1,000. Viktor Kazanov, a Russian immigrant who owned half of Detroit's illegal businesses. A man Jason hoped he'd never meet again. "How did you get this number?" he asked hoarsely. "I have a lot of numbers, River, and addresses, like Devereaux Street, 27, apartment 6, nice neighborhood, schools close by, park, convenient with a kid, right?" Jason instinctively looked out the window as if expecting to see an observer. "What do you want?" he asked, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You know what I want." Casanova's voice became steely. "A debt with interest. 5 years have passed and the amount has gone up. 80,000, River, and I'm waiting. I don't have that kind of money. You will. You got a week, and then we'll talk again. And River," Kasanov paused, "you have a wonderful family, take care of it." The beeps were short, frequent, like heartbeats. Jason slowly lowered the receiver. His hands trembled. Who was that? Alexa stood in the doorway looking anxiously at her husband's pale face. "Wrong number." He tried to smile, but it was unconvincing. "I was just surprised. No one had called my home number in a long time." She nodded, though there was a look of doubt in her eyes. "Do you want coffee? I was just about to make some." Yeah, thanks. Yep, I'll check my email." Jason turned on his computer, an old laptop he'd bought at a flea market. 50 new emails, mostly junk mail, and one with no subject line, from an unfamiliar address. Inside, there's just a picture. Alexa walking out of the supermarket with Sarah in her arms. The picture was taken yesterday. Jason recognized his daughter's pink jumpsuit and his wife's bag. He stared at the screen for a second, then abruptly slammed the laptop lid shut. "Everything okay?" Alexa set her cup of coffee down beside him. "Yeah, just a headache." He rubbed his temples. "It's nothing." Asterisk, 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 Jason took the next day off, and after telling Alexa he was going to a job interview at another printing company, he went to the bank. He couldn't get a loan, of course. His criminal record and unstable income made him a financial pariah. Then he went to 3 pawn shops, but everything that he and Alexa had valuable would not have been 1/10 of the required amount. As he passed the Blue Lantern bar on the corner of Washington Street, he noticed a familiar face. Eddie Martinez, with whom they had once worked together at a car wash, and then they went their separate ways. Eddie had taken a different road, becoming a pill dealer in nightclubs. Jason hesitated but pushed open the bar door. "Jay Reeve?" Eddie grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "Haven't seen you in ages, bro. Heard you were out of commission." They hugged awkwardly, man to man. "What's up, Eddie?" Jason ordered 2 beers. "It's all right. Nothing's changing. Same old shit, just with different numbers." Eddie sipped his beer. "What about you? They say you settled down, got married, had a kid and everything." "Yeah." Jason smiled involuntarily, thinking of Sarah. "My daughter will be a year old soon." "Wow." Eddie shook his head. "Who'd have thought it? Jay Reeve's a good family man. Does your wife know about your past?" "Past? She knows I've been in jail. Doesn't know the details." Jason frowned. "Look, Eddie, I need a job, something quick and lucrative." "Not dealing," he added hastily, seeing Eddie's eyes light up. "Something not exactly legal, but not too dangerous. You know?" "Money problems?" Eddie asked understandingly. "You could say that." "How much do you need?" 80,000. Eddie whistled. "Wow! Did someone nail you?" Jason was silent, twirling the bottle in his hands. "Kasanov, huh?" Eddie asked quietly. "Old debt? Where did you come from?" "Everyone knows you owed him a debt. Thought it was all forgotten when you sat down." Jason rubbed his face tiredly. "I was hoping that in 5 years he'd find some new distractions or go back to Russia or die," Eddie finished for him. "Tough luck, bro. Kazanov's the kind of guy who never forgets or forgives. Can you help me or not?" Eddie thought about it. 80 grand in a week. That's unrealistic, Jay, even if you decided to go back to your old business. But he lowered his voice. "I know a guy looking for a driver to haul the goods for 15 grand. Round trip, 12 hours. Drugs?" Jason tensed up. "Don't ask questions and you won't have to lie." Eddie shrugged. "But the risk is minimal. You've got clean papers, a decent car. No one's going to stop you. Jason stared into his glass for a long moment. 15 grand was just the beginning of the sum. And if he gets caught, he could get life this time. Sarah will grow up without a father. Alexa will be alone. No, he finally said. There has to be another way. If I go back to the old way, it was all for nothing. Prison, rehab, a second chance. Whatever you say, Eddie finished his beer. But if you change your mind, call me. You don't have a lot of options, Jay. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At home, Jason stood under the shower for a long time, letting the hot water wash away the tension of the day. But with the water went the hope Eddie was right. He didn't have any options. Legally, he couldn't make that kind of money in a week. So he'd have to meet Casanova face to face and try to make a deal. Is everything okay? Alexa hugged him from behind as he came out of the bathroom. You've been kind of tense the last few days. Just tired. He kissed the top of her head. How's Sarah? She's asleep. Crawled after me like a little detective all day. She smiled. How did the interview go? Jason hesitated. Lying was never easy for him, especially with Alexa. Not great. They're looking for someone with experience. Don't feel bad. She stroked his cheek. Something will turn up. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He looked at Alexa sleeping, at her peaceful face, her long eyelashes, her hair strewn across the pillow. She had so much faith in him, in their future, and he'd ruined it all again. At dawn, another message arrived, this time with an address and time. Riverbend Park, 9 p.m., come alone, KW. All day, Jason hadn't been able to find a place to be. He told Alexa he had a double shift at work and warned her he'd be back late. Maybe Sarah and I could stop by your place for lunch. She suggested it. It's been a while since we've been to that part of town. No, he answered too sharply, and then softened when he saw her surprised look. I mean, we shouldn't. We have a big order. It won't be until lunch. Okay. She still looked puzzled. I'll see you tonight then. Riverbend Park was on the outskirts of the city, next to abandoned warehouses. It had once been a bustling industrial district, but now most of the buildings were empty, and the park had become a haven for vagrants and drug addicts. Jason arrived 10 minutes early. It was dark, and the only source of light was the sparse streetlights along the central alley. He sat down on a bench by the pond and waited, looking around nervously. At precisely 9 o'clock, two figures emerged from the darkness. One he recognized at once, a tall, broad-shouldered man with graying temples and cold blue eyes, Victor Kazanov. The other was obviously a bodyguard, a stocky fellow with a bull neck and a wary look. River. Kazanov sat down next to him on the bench. The bodyguard remained standing a couple of meters away. It's been a long time. Kazanov, Jason tried to keep his voice firm. I've come to talk about duty. Duty? The Russian raised an eyebrow. I thought it was about the weather. 80,000, River. You got it? I don't have that kind of money, and you know it. I know that. Kazanov nodded. But that's your problem, not mine. I gave you money for a case. The case failed, you went to jail, but the debt remained, with interest. Give me more time. Jason stepped forward. A month. I'll find a way. Kazanov grinned. A month ago, you asked for a week. Now you're asking for a month. What's next? A year? 10 years? He shook his head. No, River, time's up. What do you suggest? Jason's throat went dry. I have a job. One job. Dangerous but lucrative. You do it, we're even. What kind of job? Kazanov looked at him with a look of slight contempt. You've become too law-abiding, River. Don't want to know the details? Reasonable. Let's say you need to pick up something from a man and bring it to me. That's it. No names, no questions. And if I refuse? Then, Kazanov sighed, as if talking to a naughty child, I'll have to find other ways to get my money. Maybe your wife will help? She's a journalist. She writes stories. Maybe she'd like to do an exclusive on the Russian mob in Boston. He smiled, revealing perfectly straight teeth. Or your daughter, Sarah, right? Cute kid. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Jason stood up abruptly, clenching his fists. Don't you dare threaten my family. The bodyguard was instantly at his side, but Kazanov stopped him with a gesture. Sit down, he ordered Jason. I'm not threatening. I'm just stating a fact. You have a debt. You must repay it. If not with money, then with a favor. If not a favor, there are other ways. Jason sank slowly back onto the bench. His head was buzzing with rage and fear. When? He asked deftly. The day after tomorrow, midnight. They'll call you and tell you where to go. Kazanov stood up. And, River, don't try to escape. Don't try to go to the police. You know how that will end. Jason sat on the bench long after Kazanov and his bodyguard had disappeared into the darkness. He stared at the black water of the pond and thought about being cornered. Kazanov wasn't kidding. He would really get to Alexa and Sarah if Jason didn't meet his conditions. But if he did, if he breaks the law again, he'd lose everything he'd lived for the last few years. Respect for himself, a chance at a normal life, and sooner or later, his freedom and his family. There was no way out. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Jason spent the next 2 days in a fog. He kept going to work, talking to Alexa, playing with Sarah, but his thoughts were far away. He considered his options: running away with his family, going to the police, agreeing to Eddie's proposal. But each path led to a dead end. Alexa noticed the change in his mood, but wrote it off as the stress of adjusting to normal life. Rachel, who'd stopped by for a visit, was less forgiving. "What's wrong with your husband?" she asked when they were alone in the kitchen. "He looks like he's seen a ghost." "It's not easy for him," Alexa defended herself. 5 years in prison, then an abrupt release. New responsibilities, a job, a baby. "Are you sure that's all it is?" Rachel raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Alexa, I'm worried about you. You still don't know much about him." "I know enough," Alexa replied firmly. "He's a good man who made a mistake, and now he's trying to make it right." "I hope you're right," Rachel sighed. "Just be careful, okay?" That evening, when Sarah was already asleep, Jason made a sudden suggestion. "Let's get out of here." Alexa, who was working on her laptop, looked up at him in surprise. "What? Where to? Anywhere. Another city, another state, a fresh start." He sat down next to her, taking her hands in his. "There are too many memories here. There are too many memories here. People from the past. I want a real new beginning. For us. For Sarah." "Jason," Alexa shook her head, confused. "I have a job here. We have an apartment. All of our stuff. We can't just take off." "Why not?" There's a feverish excitement in his eyes. "You can write anywhere. I'll get a job. We'll get a new apartment. Things don't matter. It's just us." "What's going on?" She scrutinized his face. "Are you afraid of something?" "No, I'm just..." He looked away. "I don't want Sarah growing up in a town where everyone knows her father was a prisoner. I don't want you to have to deal with the stares all the time because of me." "No one is giving me slanted looks," Alexa objected softly. "And Sarah is too young to understand such things. We'll have time to prepare her to talk about your past." "But, Jason," she placed her palm on his cheek, "whatever's bothering you, we can handle it together. But running away isn't the answer. Wherever we go, your past is coming with us. If you only knew," he thought. "If you only knew that my past was already here, breathing down our necks, threatening everything we hold dear." "You're right." He kissed her palm. "Forget it. It was a stupid idea." He lay awake again that night, listening to his wife and daughter's breathing. Tomorrow at midnight, he would have to make a choice, and whatever he chose, the price would be exorbitant. In the morning, another message arrived. A picture of him walking out of the Blue Lantern with Eddie, and a short caption, "Don't bother looking for other options, KW." Jason deleted the message, feeling cold fear gripping his insides. Kazanov was watching his every move. He knew about the meeting with Eddie, knew Jason was looking for alternatives. There was no choice. That afternoon, he called Alexa from the print shop and told her he'd be late. A big rush order, he'd have to work through the night. "Is everything okay?" I could hear the worry in her voice. "You've been weird the last few days." "I'm fine, just tired," he replied, trying to keep his voice natural. "I'll call you on my way home." "Okay, Sarah and I will be waiting," her voice softened. "I love you, Jason. I love you too," he said, feeling a lump in his throat. "More than anything in the world." He spent the rest of the day in a fog, mechanically doing his work. His mind was reeling with plans, options, possible escape routes, but all of them crumbled into one simple truth. Kazanov would not retreat. He would find them wherever they hid, and he would make them pay. At 10 p.m., the phone rang. Jason knew it wasn't Kazanov yet, it was too early. It was Rachel. "Listen, I forgot my favorite scarf at your place," she said. "Alexa says you're running late at work. Can I stop by myself? Is she home?" "Yes, home," Jason answered absent-mindedly. "Sarah's probably asleep by now, so call ahead." "Sure. Is everything okay, Jason?" "You sound weird." "I'm fine," he replied tiredly. "Just a lot of work." At 11:30, a message came in with an address, an abandoned warehouse in an industrial area. Jason knew the area a deafening place, especially at night, perfect for transferring illegal cargo, or for eliminating unwanted witnesses. He turned off the lights in his office, said goodbye to the night watchman, and got into his car. His hands shook as he started the engine. Alexa's face was in front of his eyes, Sarah's smile. Everything he cared about, everything he was trying to be a better man for. Suddenly, it hit him. He couldn't risk his freedom. It would mean losing his family, but he could back up. Opening the glove compartment, Jason pulled out the old tape recorder he used to take work notes, checked the battery full. He turned the recorder on and tucked it into his inside jacket pocket. If he doesn't come back, if something goes wrong, at least there'd be proof. The drive to the warehouse took about 20 minutes. Jason parked in the shade and sat still for a few minutes, gathering his thoughts. Then he took a deep breath and got out of the car. The warehouse gate was ajar. There was a dim light inside. Jason slipped cautiously inside, peering tensely into the semi-darkness. The huge room was empty, except for a few drawers against the far wall and a table in the middle where a man sat. Not Kazanov. His assistant was the bull-necked bodyguard. "River," he nodded. "Come closer." Jason approached the table slowly, ready to defend himself or run at any moment. "Where's Kazanov?" he asked, looking around. "The boss has other things to do." The bodyguard snorted. "He sent me with instructions." On the table was a gun and a photograph of a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. "That's Michael Donahue," the bodyguard explained. "He's a businessman, lives on Beacon Hill. He got held up at the office today. He'll be heading home in about an hour. Alone." He pushed the gun toward Jason. "You stop his car, shoot him, pick up the briefcase and bring it here. That's it." Jason stared at the gun like a poisonous snake. "You want me to kill a man?" "I don't want anything," the bodyguard shrugged. "It's what the boss wants, and he doesn't ask. He orders it. Either you do it, or..." He made an emphatic gesture with his hand across his throat. "Your family suffers." Jason went pale. "I'm not a killer," he whispered. "I never..." "You will be now," the bodyguard replied indifferently. "You have 20 minutes to think about it. Then some men will come for you and take you to your place of work. After that, you will bring the briefcase here. You'll be free to go. Debt forgiven." Jason felt the ground slipping away from under his feet. Robbery was one thing, but murder? A man he didn't even know? For some briefcase? "I can't do that. Then your wife and daughter will die," the bodyguard said simply, as if he were giving a weather report. "Not today, not tomorrow, maybe a week or a month from now, when you least expect it." Kazanov doesn't take no for an answer, River. Jason stared at the man's picture, an ordinary face. Maybe he had a family too, children, a wife waiting for him at home. No, he couldn't do that, not even under threat of death. "Tell Casanova I'll find another way to pay him back," Jason said firmly. "Give me a month, I'll get the money, all 80,000, but I won't kill." The bodyguard looked at him with a strange expression, a mixture of surprise and... respect? Respect? "Your decision," he said at last. "I'll tell the boss. But don't expect any favors." Jason turned and headed for the exit. With each step, he felt the tension release him. He knew he had just signed, perhaps, his own death warrant. But there are some things you can't cross, even for the ones you love. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Back in the car, Jason sat for a few minutes just breathing. Then he pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number of Detective Thornton, the cop who had once handled his case and then helped him get released. "Thornton here. came a sleepy voice. "This is Jason Rivera, Detective. I need your help." "River?" Thornton's voice became instantly collected. "What's wrong?" "I'm in trouble. My family is in danger." Jason spoke quickly, realizing that every second counted. "Victor Kazanov. He's demanding that I—" Suddenly, there was the sound of an incoming message. Jason glanced at the screen and froze. A picture of their house, the lights in the windows, and the caption, "It's too late, River, you've made your choice." "Oh God," he exhaled. "No." "River, what's going on?" Thornton's voice sounded worried. "My family! They're in front of my house!" Jason started the engine in a panic. "Call the patrol to 27 Devereaux Street, hurry!" He threw the phone on the seat and pushed the gas pedal to the floor. The tires shrieked and the car sped away. All the way home, Jason prayed like he'd never prayed in his life. "Please let them be okay. Please let me make it. Please let it just be a threat, a bluff." As he turned onto his street, his heart dropped. 2 police cars with their blinkers on, an ambulance, and several civilian cars were parked outside the house. The sidewalk was crowded with neighbors in hastily thrown-on clothes. Jason braked sharply, jumped out of the car, and rushed toward the house. A policeman tried to stop him, but he lashed out. "This is my house, my family." The apartment was in chaos. Cops, medics, flashing flashlights. Jason froze on the threshold, unable to take a step forward. In the bedroom, he saw a figure covered by a sheet. A small figure, motionless. "No," he whispered, feeling his legs shaking. "No, no, no, no." "Jason!" Rachel's voice cut through the fog in his head. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, pale as a sheet, her hands bloody. "Jason, thank God!" "Rachel, where's Alexa? Where's Sarah?" He rushed to her, grabbing her by the shoulders. "Tell me!" Rachel looked at him with horror and pity. "I'm so sorry, Jason," she whispered. "I came to get the scarf." The door was open. I walked in and... Jason pushed her away and rushed into the bedroom. Detective Thornton, already on the scene, tried to stop him. "River, don't!" But it was too late. Jason ripped the sheet off and screamed in horror and pain. Alexa was lying on the bed, his Alexa, with her head unnaturally tilted back and her eyes open, unseeing. Her throat was slit from ear to ear. Beside her, Sarah's little body wrapped in a bloody blanket. "No!" The howl that came from his chest was unlike a human voice. "No, no, no, no!" He fell to his knees beside the bed, holding out his trembling hands to his wife and daughter, not believing, not wanting to believe. "River." Thornton put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, they're gone." Jason didn't hear. He was hugging the cold bodies of his loved ones, rocking back and forth, crying without tears, without sound, just opening and closing his mouth like a beached fish. "It's my fault," he whispered at last. "It's all my fault." Thornton sat down beside him. "River, we need to talk. What happened? Who did this?" Jason stared at him blankly. "Kazanov," he said with only his lips. "Victor Kazanov." "Russian?" Thornton tensed. "Are you sure?" Jason nodded slowly. Then, as if remembering something, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tape recorder. "Here." His voice was lifeless. "It's all on here. The meeting, the threats, everything." Thornton took the device gingerly. "River, we need to get you out of here. If Kazanov's behind this, you're in danger." "What difference does it make?" Jason replied indifferently. "He's already taken everything of value to me." He touched Alexa's cold cheek one last time, ran a finger through Sarah's soft hair. Then he rose slowly. "I'm going to kill him," he said with frightening calm. "I'm going to find Casanova and kill him with my own hands." "You will come with us now," Thornton said firmly. "We'll sort it out, legally." Jason looked at him with a bitter grin. "The law? What law, detective? The one that couldn't protect my family? The one that kept me in jail while the likes of Kasanov walked the streets freely?" But he didn't fight back. His strength suddenly left him, and he let the police officers lead him out of the house, past the curious neighbors, and into a waiting patrol car. At the last moment, as he was getting into the car, he turned around and looked at his house. The windows were still lit, but it was no longer a house, just a box of brick and concrete. Everything that had made it home, everything worth waking up in the morning and fighting the past for, now lay on a bloody bed, dead, cold, lost forever, "I'll find you, Kasanov," Jason whispered into the night. "I swear on everything that was sacred to me, I will find you." Jason Rivera was placed in a holding cell for his own safety, not as a suspect, as a witness and potential victim. Ironic, he thought, looking at the familiar gray walls. The circle had closed. He was back in the cage. The first 3 days passed like a blur. Interrogations, formalities, conversations with the lawyer who had been assigned to him by the state. Jason answered mechanically without emotion, as if he were talking about someone else. He handed over the tape recorder with the recording of the meeting with Casanova's men, talked about the debt, about the threats, about the last conversation. Only one thing he kept silent about was his plans for revenge. On the 4th day, Detective Thornton showed up. "How are you?" he asked, sitting down across from Jason. A pointless question. The answer was written on Rivera's gaunt face, in his droopy eyes, in the slumped shoulders of a man who had lost everything. "Any news on Casanova?" Jason asked instead of answering. Thornton shook his head. "He's gone. Disappeared. We've checked all known addresses, contacted informants, nothing. Maybe he's already left the country." "He's not leaving," Jason said quietly. "People like him think they're invulnerable. He's just waiting." "Maybe," Thornton agreed. "But we'll find him before he does. Your tape gave us enough evidence to get an arrest warrant. It's a matter of principle. He killed your family, River." "Our family," Jason corrected. "He killed our family. He killed me too. Only my body hasn't realized it yet." Thornton sighed and rubbed his chin. "Look, the Bureau thinks you'd be better off in the witness protection program. New name, new city, new life. As long as Kazanov's out there, you're in danger." Jason grinned, bitterly, mirthlessly. "Danger? You don't understand, Detective. I have nothing more to lose. I'm already dead." "You're wrong," Thornton said firmly. "You have the opportunity to start over. Alexa would want that." "Don't you dare tell me what Alexa would have wanted." Jason's voice was the first emotion in his voice. Anger, hurt. "You didn't know her. You didn't know us." "I know she believed in you," the detective replied calmly. "In your ability to change, to be a better person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have married you, wouldn't have had a child with you." Jason lowered his head. Memories crashed over him like a wave. Alexa's smile, Sarah's laughter, the warm evenings in their small apartment, the plans for a future that was never meant to be. "When is the funeral?" he asked, deftly. "The day after tomorrow. I'll arrange to have you brought in. Under guard, of course." "Of course," Jason echoed. "I'd like to be alone, Detective." Thornton nodded and stood up. "I'll be back tomorrow. I'll bring you a suit for the ceremony." When the door closed behind Thornton, Jason lay down on the narrow bunk and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep, just fell into a blackness where there were no thoughts, no feelings, just emptiness. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The funeral was held in the pouring rain. The 2 coffins, white and dark cherry, seemed as unreal as a horror movie set. Jason was accompanied by 2 plainclothes policemen, but Thornton made sure they kept their distance, giving him a chance to say goodbye to his family. Not many people showed up. Alexa's co-workers from the newsroom, Rachel, pale and drained. A few neighbors. The priest said some words about God's providence and meeting in a better world, but Jason wasn't listening. He looked at the pictures, Alexa with a radiant smile and Sarah, just starting to walk, with a serious, focused expression on her tiny face. When it was over, Rachel came up to him. "I never approved of your marriage," she said, looking past him. "I didn't think you were right for her. But she was happy with you. Really happy. And for that I'm grateful." Jason nodded silently. The words stuck in his throat. "I left an envelope for you at the newsroom," Rachel continued. "From Alexa. She was recording video diaries for Sarah, to show her when she grows up. Your family history, I think you should see it." She reached out as if she wanted to touch his shoulder, but changed her mind and just turned and walked away. Jason was escorted back to his cell by Thornton himself. "I've got news," the detective said as they got into the car. "We have information that Kazanov is still in town. He has an appointment with a businessman at the Pine Coast Country Club in 3 days." Jason tensed. Are you going to arrest him? We'll try, but he's got good security. He's got connections in high places. It'll take time to prepare. Thornton gave him a hard look. I'm telling you this for a reason, River. I can see what you're thinking. Don't do anything stupid. Leave it to the professionals. What if your professionals are late again? Jason asked in a muffled voice. Like they were late to my house? We'll do everything we can. Thornton looked away, and Jason realized that the detective felt guilty about what had happened. I promise. They were silent the whole way back. Jason stared out the window at the city whizzing by, thinking that somewhere among the streets and houses was the man who had taken everything from him. A man who deserved only one thing: a painful death. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next morning, Jason woke up with a clear plan. He called the guard and asked him to page Thornton. I've agreed to the witness protection program, he said as the detective appeared in the cell. Thornton raised his eyebrows in surprise. Just like that? Just yesterday you flatly refused. I realized you were right, Jason tried to keep his voice humble. Alexa believed in me, in my ability to be a better person, to start a new life. I can't let her down, even now. Thornton scrutinized his face, as if trying to detect a catch. But Jason had prepared himself well for this conversation. I'm glad you made the right decision, the detective said at last. The paperwork will take a day or two. In the meantime, is there anything I can do for you? Yeah, Jason paused. Rachel said that Alexa left the videotapes for Sarah, in the newsroom. I'd like to see them before I disappear. Thornton hesitated. I don't see a problem with that. We could arrange for you to visit the newsroom under guard. This afternoon? Thank you, Jason nodded. And, can I get some things from our apartment? Photos, personal items. I don't want to start a new life without a single reminder of them. It's more complicated than that, Thornton frowned. The apartment is still sealed as a crime scene, but I think we can arrange for you to come in for a short time under supervision. I'd be very grateful, Jason said quietly. When the detective left, Jason sat down on the bunk and closed his eyes. The first step had been taken. Now the details had to be worked out. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Frank Donovan, the editor-in-chief of the Boston Globe, a tall, gray-haired man with tired eyes, met them in the newsroom. He shook Jason's hand and offered his condolences. Alexa was one of our best journalists, he said, and a wonderful person. It's a huge loss for all of us. Jason was escorted into an empty office with a computer, where an envelope from Rachel was waiting, a plain brown package marked, "For Jason." Inside was a flash drive. We'll leave you alone, Thornton said. I'll be right outside the door if you need me. Jason inserted the flash drive into the computer. There was a folder with dozens of video files on it, neatly numbered by date. He opened the first one. Alexa was sitting in their kitchen, smiling at the camera. Hi, Sarah. This is your mom. Right now, you're still quite tiny, sleeping in your crib, and I decided to start recording these videos for you, so that when you grow up, you can see what we were like, how it all started. Jason listened to her talk about her job, about meeting him, about prison dates, about the wedding, about Sarah's birth. With each video, the pain in his heart grew sharper, but he couldn't stop, greedily absorbing every word, every smile, every gesture. The last recording was made the day before the tragedy. Dad's been kind of tense lately. I think he's still having a hard time getting used to the freedom, the responsibility. But he's trying so hard, Sarah. You should see the way he looks at you. Such love, such tenderness. He's a wonderful father. And you know, I've never regretted choosing him, not for a second. The screen went blank. Jason sat staring into the blackness and felt tears running down his cheeks. But along with the pain came something else in his heart. Determination. A cold, hard determination to finish what he'd started. For Alexa, for Sarah, for their broken history. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The apartment looked exactly the same as it had that night, except the bodies had been removed, and the bed was made up with clean linens. But Jason could still smell it, the stench of death embedded in the walls. You have 10 minutes, Thornton said, staying at the door. Get what you need. Jason went methodically through the rooms, putting photos, children's toys, a a couple of books from the shelf into his backpack. He stayed in the bathroom a minute longer than necessary. He opened the medicine cabinet, found the painkiller Alexa took for her migraines, and tucked it in his pocket. Then he looked into the bedroom and pulled a razor from the nightstand. "Is that it?" Thornton asked when he returned to the hallway. "That's it," Jason nodded, taking one last look at the apartment. "Goodbye." Jason complained of a bad headache and asked for water for his pills. When the guard turned away to pour water from a pitcher, Jason discreetly slipped crushed sleeping pills from the medicine cabinet into his coffee cup. The guard went back to his post, finished his coffee, and 20 minutes later was fast asleep against the wall. The cell keys were hanging from his belt. Getting out of the police station was easier than Jason had expected. At 2 a.m, the building was almost empty, with only a few officers on duty on the first floor. He made his way down the fire escape, slipped out the back door, and disappeared into the darkness. The Pine Coast Club was located in the suburbs, surrounded by woods and lakes, a fashionable vacation spot for the rich and powerful. Jason had gotten there on a stolen bicycle, leaving it in the bushes near the entrance. The security was serious, but not impenetrable. Jason found a weak spot, the kitchen block, where food trucks were constantly pulling up. Pretending to be the cook's assistant, he slipped inside. He recognized Casanova at once, sitting at a table in the far corner of the restaurant, talking to a man in an expensive suit. The bodyguard was standing nearby, looking around the room tensely. Jason waited until the meeting was over and followed Casanova. He wasn't heading for the exit, but toward the spa. It couldn't have been better, a secluded place where the Russian would probably be alone. He was right. Kazanov let the bodyguard go and entered the sauna. Jason, after waiting a few minutes, slipped in after him. Inside, it was hot and hazy with steam. Kazanov sat on the top shelf with his eyes covered. He looked relaxed, peaceful, as if he didn't have the lives of 2 innocent people on his conscience. "Hey, Kazanov," Jason said quietly, locking the door from the inside. The Russian flinched and opened his eyes. "River?" The amazement on his face was quickly replaced by a contemptuous grin. "Unexpected. I thought you'd be long gone by now, or dead." "I am dead," Jason replied calmly, pulling out a razor. "You killed me along with my family." Kasanov tensed, but showed no fear. "So what now? You gonna kill me? You think that'll make a difference? Get your wife and child back?" "No," Jason shook his head. "Nothing will bring them back, but you'll pay. Slowly, painfully, like they did." He stepped forward. Kazanov tried to reach for the call button, but Jason was faster. The razor cut through the air, leaving a thin red line on the Russian's chest. "Wait!" Kazanov held up his hands. "We can make a deal. Money. A lot of money. More than you can imagine." "I don't want money." Jason leaned closer. "I want you to feel what they felt. Fear, pain, helplessness." And then nothing. Victor Casanova's body was found this morning. Death was caused by multiple cuts and blood loss. The cut on his throat was particularly deep, just like Alexa Rivers. Detective Thornton stood outside the sauna, watching forensics collect evidence. "Any witnesses?" he asked his assistant. "No one saw anything, Chief. The cameras in that part of the complex had been disabled due to technical problems. Someone was well prepared." Thornton nodded. He wasn't surprised, nor was he surprised that Jason River had disappeared from the cell. It was expected. "Keep looking," he said. "There must be some leads." But deep down, he knew they wouldn't, or just enough to make it look like a gang war, because sometimes justice requires turning a blind eye to the letter of the law. A month after Casanova's murder, there was a knock on Thornton's office door. Jason Rivera stood on the doorstep, slimmed down, beard grown back, but with strangely calm eyes. "I've come to turn myself in," he said simply. Thornton gestured him in and closed the door. "Surrender? For what?" "For the murder of Victor Casanova." The detective looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. Kasanov died as a result of an accident. He slipped in the sauna, fell on a broken bottle. A tragedy, of course, but it happens." "Accident?" Jason frowned. "But I don't know what you're going to say, Mr. River." Thornton interrupted him, emphasizing the emphasis. But we have no proof of anyone's guilt in Casanova's death, and it's unlikely that there will be any." Their gazes met, and Jason nodded slowly, realizing what he hadn't said. "What now?" he asked quietly. "You're free now." Thornton shrugged. "You can go wherever you want, start a new life, or continue the old one, whatever you prefer." "And my family?" "There's no bringing them back," the detective said softly. "But I think they'd want you to move on, for their sake." Jason was silent, staring out the window at the city in the fall sunshine. The city where he'd been happy and lost everything. The city that now seemed alien and empty. "I don't know how to go on," he confessed. "No one does." Thornton put a hand on his shoulder. "We just do it, day by day, one step at a time." Jason nodded and stood up. "Thank you, Detective." "You're welcome." Thornton walked him to the door. "And River, take care of yourself." As he left the police station, Jason stood on the steps, squinting against the bright light. Then he took the flash drive with Alexa's videos out of his pocket, clenched it in his fist, and walked slowly forward. Into the unknown, into the void, into a life that would never be the same again. But he would live, because they would want him to. His Alexa, his Sarah, his lost family, it was the only thing he could do for them.